time for the Susan Taylor Podcast, where we discuss the yoga of mind, medicine, and healing. Author of Feeling Good Matters, Sexual Radiance, and the Vital Energy Program, Dr. Taylor imparts authentic knowledge and practical tools that inspire, educate, and empower us to be a healing force for positive change. So join us and take your life and our planet to the next level.
Hello and welcome to podcast 140. Feel out of control? Catch your breath. Today's topic was inspired by our community members. I'm getting a lot of feedback on some of these podcasts that I'm doing on breath, working with anxiety and other emotional happenings based on, how we're living. You may be losing jobs, maybe changing family dynamics, and the whole COVID pandemic has causing things to really change, and perhaps it's rocking our stability a little bit. So today we will talk about breath, and we're going to talk about breath because our life is fully dependent on breath. When our breath ceases, we actually die. And so when we say catch your breath, we're really saying it's because you've lost control. But what do I mean by losing control? Well, we've lost control when we let outside influences disturb us and basically hijack our mind. And this causes anxiety and other emotional disturbances. In today's episode, I'd like to discuss the mind-body connection and why it's important to take control of your breath, and 2 practices to get back control. The more we know, of our breath, and the more we know about how it works and feeling it within ourselves and having that experience, the more we know about our mind. I'm linking the 2 because when we're out of control, namely our emotions are disturbed, we have to have a way to bring our mind back home. There are 4 teachings that I've picked up over my years and decades of study from the ancient masters, and I thought to bring them up for your attention today. And the first one, as you've always heard me say, master your breath and master your mind, or even master your breath, master your health, I'll get to in a minute. Because the breath links the mind and the body, so whatever goes on in the mind does have a direct impact on the body. Our mind has a limitless power. The great mastery we have over our mind, the greater it is, the greater mastery we have over our surroundings. So again, we're using this mind. You know how I always say the energy of our mind is the essence of our life. And that's why at the Center for Meditation Science and the work that I've been doing is really training your mind. Because if our mind is doubtful, fearful, or scattered, then everything falls apart. And the less we know of ourselves, the less we know about others. So training that mind, bringing the mind and body together, is really what we need to have prosperity in the external world. So that's the 3rd component here. And the other teaching that I got, and I've said it in the very beginning, mind is the master of our health and healing. It's actually the conduit through which we experience the world. Every fluctuation in our mind affects our body. For example, anger affects our body, jealousy, joy, and happiness also too, so positive and negative, all affect our body. They send vibrations, and those vibrations turn into matter, and that's how we create our bodies. Because the nervous system responds to our emotions. So I said, master your breath, master your mind. Number 2, our mind has limitless power. If the mind is doubtful, fearful, or even scattered, everything falls apart. And basically out of this, our prosperity in the external world is dependent on the mastery of our mind. And our mind is the master of our health and well-being. By the way, I want to go back to point 3. Prosperity I'm not defining on how much money you make. I'm talking about prosperity, meaning how we really come along in the external world and what kind of environment and life we create for ourselves. So why is it important to take control over our breath when we're talking about our mind? Uniting the mind and breath gives us access to our healing potential, as well as our emotions, and as well as our physiological functioning. So I've heard if you master your breath, you master your health. It's as simple as that. And this powerful statement is true for several reasons. Let me go over these several reasons that I'm putting in my new book, Return to Radiance, a 21-day transformation to vitality. And I say the first statement is, breath is the vehicle through which prana, our vital energy, is brought into the brain. When we have conscious control over our breath, we're able to regulate all the vital energy centers within the brain as well as the body. The third point I make, the way we breathe determines the health of all our organs, especially the brain, because the breath's ability to regulate the autonomic nervous system is really profound. And we've all talked about that, those that have taken the trainings that I offer. We have the branches of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Those branches really are what cause all the communication and the happenings of our body in our wakeful state, our sleeping state, and, even when we're basically knocked out, unconscious in our deep, deep sleep many times. The way we breathe determines our brain's vibration. If you breathe smoothly, it'll influence the mind field by producing harmony. In contrast, pauses or jerkiness in our breathing patterns produce irritation and instability in our mind. And you know what? I always use this example. Remember a time when you were swimming, when you were forced to hold your breath perhaps too long, and your mind, you got that panicked feeling? Well, that's because the pause between your exhalation and inhalation do elicit a signal to the nervous system, causing an alarm reaction that you're in danger. So the longer the pause that you experience, when we experience that, the longer the pause, the more probably feeling of danger you're going to have. But we do have that pause every day when we're not paying attention to our breath. That's my point here. Even though it's a small pause, it sends a small signal to our nervous system. So paying attention to that is very helpful in balancing the mind as well as the nervous system. Breath links us to our spirit. And the word spirit comes from the Latin root spirare, which means to breathe. We breathe life into ourselves at birth, and at death we expire and breath leaves, along with the spirit. So keep in mind that breathing connects all systems in our bodies by way of our nervous system. And nothing happens in our bodies without breath. The heart can't pump, the brain can't function, hormones can't flow, and it goes on, because breathing incorrectly, we harm our system. And when we breathe correctly, we're far along our road to vitality and having that energy that we overcome that fatigue and we're able to stay sharp by really focusing on our breath. So how do we catch our breath? Well, there are two practices that I even spoke about in the last episode on taking control of your breath. And I won't go into detail here because there are plenty of episodes and guided practices that I offer that really go into this. But the first is the crocodile pose, where we're face down, and then we establish diaphragmatic breathing. And once we do that, we can bring the mind back home, and we learn to feel what that mechanics is like. And we actually unite the body with the breath. And it's a very easy pose to do. Makarasana is the yogic term for it, Avasana. And it's really the crocodile pose. And you can look that up and see, or you can look in our resource library for that too. Then we have the corpse pose face up. That's where Shavasana, which we say in yoga science, and the corpse pose face up, that's the ultimate pose for relaxation. You have a little cushion underneath the back of your head. You may have your knees bent if you prefer, or slouched up over a chair, or propped up, I should say, over a chair to keep the pressure off of the lower back. And you can breathe this way. 5 to 10 minutes of just doing this, even in the middle of the day, is enough to really get the system back up and feeling vital. And once learned, then you can use weights while you're lying down to strengthen the diaphragm. And I did that, as I mentioned in our last episode. I used to do that in my younger days, but I'm still doing what I call sandbag breathing, what yoga science calls sandbag breathing. I still do it now daily because it strengthens that diaphragm muscle. And when that muscle is nice and strong, we're able to catch our breath. We're able to really feel that confidence and that strong connection we have to the, uniting that breath with the mind. So you can practice that for 5 minutes each day, and you'll be really stellar. You'll feel so great. Because we work with these muscles, it engages them when breathing, when we're not doing the practice, and you'll see even your posture will begin to change. Oftentimes when we feel short of breath, it's due to an insufficient exhalation, leaving that excess residual air in our lungs. So with lack of activity and poor sitting habits, our muscles that we use can really weaken, especially our diaphragm, and we don't really learn to exhale fully. So teaching the basics is the key for our whole meditation. All our meditation specialists do this because we understand that the mechanics of breathing is at the core of really working and training the mind. And it's at the core for any kind of meditation practice that you do. So as you apply any of these skills, keep two things in mind. Our breathing is dictated in part by our current thoughts, so make sure we work on having positive, happy thoughts. And that takes a little time sometimes, especially if we're in a stressful or a perceived stressful situation that something doesn't feel right. If we're panicking with something else happening, but really work on that. And the second is take these skills because they work as well as the degree which you're going to focus on them. So that's why I say practice 5 minutes, each day. You can go and just try it. If you can't even lie down, sitting is a little bit more difficult, but at least allow yourself a 5-minute breathing break during the day. Everything in life that you want to put forward does require attention. Put most of your effort into not thinking about anything else, not the worrying of your thoughts, not what you're going to do after you finish your breathing skill. Just put your mind into what you're doing at the present time, and that habit, that skill will become a habit. And you can follow that literally skillfully, and you'll see tremendous, tremendous results. And before really turning and going to the end, I'd like to say, we all have at some point, we all will at some point stop breathing, right? And what if we live, though, one breath at a time? We don't really give breathing much thought because it's so easy. It's one of our innate habits. It happens. Even if, you faint, you will just automatically start breathing again. So it is innate. And half the time we don't even give notice to our breath. And yet it's our source of life. Think about that phrase as we started today, catch your breath. And you have to catch it because you've lost control over it. And how do you know if you've lost control over it? Well, your thoughts have gone astray. When we find control over our breath, we're able to live in the present and enjoy whatever life has to offer at that moment. And if you'd like to join me on Thursday nights for live classes online where we focus on breathing and meditation, let me know and we can sign you up. And as I always say, do your research, and any questions or comments, please let me know. And that brings us to the end of this episode. And always contact us if you have any questions, comments, or feedback. I appreciate the feedback that I got from our last episode asking for more breath-related concepts and topics. And anything you want to hear, just let us know. And until next time, as I always say, remain calm, consciously aware, living in the moment.